Anytime you have a grass crop like wheat, the most devastating weeds are grasses. So we'll talk about how you're going to control grass in your wheat this year.
All right, first of all, hopefully you have a pre-emerge herbicide down, and this is going to help dictate which products post-emerge we're going to choose.
Yep.
So for example, say you've got Zidua down, it's a group 15. Great, your options are wide open. There's no group 15s to use later in the season that are going to have contact activity. So you could use a group 1 or a group 2. Now let's say that you put Prepare down. So you've got an ALS herbicide down. Then we want to use an ACC ACE product post. And if you have that ALS down, can you use ALS again post? Well, you can by label, but then we start worrying about, wow, we're using the same mode of action over and over again, and we worry about resistance.
So in other words, if you've got Prepare down, don't use Everest post.
Okay, while we're on the ALS products, let's talk about your post-emerge options for straight grass killers that are in the ALS family. You've got things like Varo, for example, that can be used, that is going to have some contact activity and also a little soil residual activity. And then, of course, you have Everest 3.0. Easier mixing, easier handling than the old Everest 2.0 formulation, same great weed control. So when we think about wild oats control and foxtail, these ALS products are pretty good at that. Especially the Everest 3.0, but Varo is going to do a nice job as well.
Yeah, and with both of them, we're talking some broadleaf control, fairly decent grass control, but a lot of times when guys say, hey, I've got a real serious problem with wild oats or foxtail, then generally speaking, we're talking Axial. Axial also seems to be pretty good in terms of tank mix options. Now there is Next Step NG, that's basically like the old Discover. So those are kind of the products we're talking about when we say ACC ACE. Again, Darren was mentioning the ALS products. You've got Varo, you've got Everest 3.0. The other thing I guess I wanted to mention when Darren said Varo, you probably haven't even heard that name, but you may have used that in a combination product like Husky Complete, for example, has both Husky and Varo in it.
And the real key thing here when we're talking about grass control with any of these products is to try to get out there when the grass is small. For a couple of reasons. One, when the wheat gets big, it's tough to get good spray coverage down through that to coat those weeds and get them under control. The other thing is when they get big, they've already started to tiller out, and then it's really difficult to get control on those grasses.
One of the biggest questions we get about any of these grass herbicides is, can I tank mix them with other products? Now I mentioned already, Axial seems to work a little bit better with tank mix partners. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention that especially is because, yes, if you're going out there, you want to get some broadleaf control and some grass control. And you say, hey, even using Everest or Varo, that's not enough by itself. I get that, okay? So here's what I usually will tell people. If you've got a zillion grass plants, okay, you have lots of grass plants, then you probably want to spray the grass herbicide completely separate from the broadleaf herbicide. There's always some degree of antagonism when you mix the two together. And what I mean by antagonism is basically you're going to have less weed control when you put the two together as opposed to when you spray them each separately. So in terms of the grass control, it might be 99% when you spray it by itself. It might be 96% or something like that when you spray it in combination. So is that a big deal when you have 100 weeds in the field? No, couldn't care less. Is it a big deal if you have 1,000,000 weeds in the field? Absolutely. You're just not getting the most bang for the dollar you invested. So we'd really highly encourage you, if you've got a major serious problem, go hit the grass first, get that under control. That's going to rob the most yield, and that's the most difficult to stop, and then come back a week or so later and kill the broadleaves.
Well, since I'm all bundled up today, it's got me thinking about cold weather spraying. And oftentimes, especially in the northern U.S., when we talk to people growing wheat, they say, well, it's always so cold when we're trying to spray, it's tough to get good kill on those weeds. And I agree. If we don't have actively growing weeds, it is difficult to get them under control because they're not taking that product in effectively. So you do want to try and time this out as best you can to get good weather. So if you see, you know what, Monday and Tuesday are not good this week, but later in this week, it's going to get up in the 60s or even 70 degrees, awesome. Save your spraying, let a couple of warm days happen, and then get the spraying done when those weeds are really actively growing. Also, utilize surfactants and nitrogen and so forth with your products as required on the label to make sure you're getting the best penetration through those leaves so you can drive that product in quickly and get weeds under control.
One of the other things too, when we talk about getting the best performance out of your grass herbicide, is use the right spray nozzle. You don't want to use those nozzles that are designed for drift reduction. Ideally, what we want is the smallest spray droplet possible, and we want to have the best spray coverage possible. So you might need to bump the water just a hair. I'm much more concerned about that size of the spray droplet though than I am about bumping water up to 20 gallons. I don't think that's necessary in most cases. You're hopefully spraying small crop and small weeds. Just make sure you're checking that nozzle first before you go spray.
Yeah, you can utilize the Ag PhD Spray Tips Guide to see what nozzle we would recommend for your farm.
Well, once again, there are a lot of different grass herbicides you can use in wheat. Many are quite effective. Just make sure you're spraying early so you have the best control.
Well, spraying early is important to control our weed of the week, but these aren't the products you're going to use. We'll share what will stop it coming up next.